There is a specific season in a person's life that has no name. Not failure, not success. Something in between that feels like neither. Where the work is happening but nothing is visible yet. Where you are becoming something but cannot prove it to anyone, including yourself. Where every external marker says nothing is working, but something inside refuses to accept that conclusion. If you are in that season right now, this video is for you. Carl Jung spent his life studying what happens just before the rise. And what he found will change how you see everything you are currently living through. 1. The invisible season everyone misreads. Jung made an observation early in his career that shaped everything that followed. The most significant transformations in human beings do not announce themselves. They happen underground, in the dark, in the quiet, in the season that looks, from the outside, like stagnation, and feels, from the inside, like being buried. He had a word for this process: individuation, the slow, non-linear, deeply personal movement toward becoming who you actually are. And he noticed something about it that contradicts everything modern culture teaches about growth. The period just before a major rise in a person's life is almost always the period that most resembles failure. Not resembles it superficially, resembles it completely. The external markers are identical. No visible progress, no confirmation from the outside, no evidence that the work is producing anything. The only difference, invisible to everyone, including sometimes the person living it, is what is happening beneath the surface. The root system being built, the inner architecture being constructed, the psychological foundation being laid for something that will eventually rise so fast, so completely, so undeniably, that the people who watched you in the underground season will not be able to explain what happened. Because they only see what is visible, and the most important work was never visible. 2. Why the confusion of others is the first sign. When you begin to rise, genuinely rise, from the foundation you have been building, the first response from most people around you will not be celebration. It will be confusion. Jung understood why. The people in your life have a model of you, built from observation, from history, from the accumulating evidence of who you have been in their presence. This model is not malicious. It is simply how human perception works. We build a picture. We expect the picture to remain consistent. When someone rises dramatically, when the person who was in the underground season suddenly emerges at a level that does not match the model breaks. And broken models produce confusion before they produce celebration. The people who knew you before cannot immediately update their picture. Their brain is doing what brains do, searching for an explanation that fits the previous pattern. They will call it luck, timing, circumstance. They will look for the external factor that explains what happened. Because the real explanation, the years of invisible inner work, the underground season of genuine transformation, is not something they watched, and people cannot give credit for what they did not see. This confusion is not a sign that you rose incorrectly. It is the precise, predictable consequence of having done the work in private. The most important work is always done in private, and private work always produces public results that confuse the people who only witnessed the public. 3. The psychological mechanism of sudden rise. Jung was a scientist before he was a philosopher, and he described the mechanism of sudden transformation with clinical precision. He called it the constellation of the self. The self, capital S, Jung's term for the organizing center of the total psyche, is always working, always moving toward the wholeness, the integration, the full expression of what a particular human being is capable of. But this movement is not linear. It does not produce consistent, measurable, externally visible progress. It produces long periods of apparent stillness, during which the internal reorganization is happening. followed by sudden, dramatic, sometimes shocking expressions of the thing that was being built. Jung compared it to the process of crystallization. A solution can be supersaturated for a long period. To the outside observer, nothing is happening. The liquid looks the same, no visible change. And then, triggered by a single point of contact, a single catalyst, the entire solution crystallizes at once. Suddenly, completely, irreversibly. The crystallization did not happen suddenly. The conditions for crystallization were built across the entire preceding period. The suddenness was only in the final expression of what was already complete beneath the surface. This is the psychological mechanism of the rise that confuses everyone. You were not stagnant during the underground season. You were supersaturating, building the internal conditions for a crystallization that, when it finally came, would look to everyone watching like it happened overnight. It did not happen overnight. It happened across every night, when you chose the work over the distraction. Every day when you stayed in the process, when nothing confirmed you should. Every season when you refused to accept the outside world's assessment of your situation as the final truth about your trajectory. 4. What Jung observed in people just before their rise. Across decades of clinical work, Jung identified specific patterns that appeared consistently in people who were on the verge of significant transformation. Not random patterns, precise ones, recognizable ones. The first pattern, intensified dreaming. In the period immediately preceding a significant life change, Jung observed that the dream life of his patients became unusually vivid, more memorable, more emotionally charged, more clearly purposeful in its imagery. He interpreted this as the unconscious accelerating its communication, pushing with increasing urgency toward the conscious mind the material that needed to be integrated before the change could fully occur. The dreams are not decoration, they are the self preparing you for what is coming. If your dreams have become more vivid, more strange, more difficult to dismiss, this is not random neurological noise. Something is being communicated. The second pattern, the dissolution of old structures. The period before a significant rise often involves the breakdown of things that previously seemed stable, relationships that no longer fit, careers that feel increasingly hollow, identities that once felt solid, now feeling like costumes. The old structures, the ones that were built for the person you were rather than the person you are becoming, begin to fail. Most people experience this as disaster. Jung experienced it as the precise mechanism of transformation. Because you cannot rise into a new form while maintaining the structure of the old one. The dissolution is not the destruction of what you are, it is the clearing of what you were, to make room for what you are about to become. The third pattern, the increase of synchronicity. Jung observed that synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, the clustering of outer events around inner states, become noticeably more frequent in the period preceding major transformation. The right person appearing at the right moment, the book that falls open to the exact page needed, the conversation that happens by apparent accident and changes a direction. These are not magical events. They are, in Jung's framework, expressions of the underlying connection between the interior process and the exterior world, becoming more visible as the interior process intensifies. Pay attention to what seems to be finding you. In the period before a rise, the world begins to organize around the direction you have committed to internally, often before you have articulated that commitment to anyone, sometimes before you have fully articulated it to yourself. The fourth pattern, the experience of being misunderstood. The person on the verge of significant rise is almost always, in the period immediately preceding it, experiencing some degree of being misread by the people around them. Not because they are communicating poorly, because they are becoming something that does not yet have a visible form. The caterpillar in the chrysalis is not communicating poorly. It simply has not yet become the thing that will make its transformation legible. The misunderstanding is not the problem. It is the evidence that the transformation is genuine, that you are becoming something that does not yet fit the categories available to the people who knew the previous version. 5. The shadow work that makes the rise permanent. Here is the difference between a rise that lasts and one that collapses. Jung was precise about this, and it is the piece that almost no one talks about. A rise built on unintegrated shadow is unstable. The shadow, everything suppressed, denied, unexamined in the self, does not disappear because external circumstances improve. It waits. And when the rise comes, when the visibility increases, when the stakes get higher, when the pressure intensifies, the shadow expresses itself. Through the self-sabotage that arrives just as things are going well. Through the relationship pattern that destroys the opportunity. Through the behavior under pressure that contradicts everything the public rise represents. Through the internal collapse that nobody sees but the person living it. The private experience of feeling like a fraud inside the public success. Jung called this the inflation of the ego, the specific psychological danger of rising without doing the internal work that makes the rise genuinely yours. The person who rises without shadow integration has not become more. They have simply given more visibility to what was always there, including the parts that were never examined. The rise that confuses everyone and lasts, the one that produces genuine, sustainable, genuinely inhabited success, is the rise that was preceded by genuine shadow work. The honest inventory of what you have been suppressing, the integration of the qualities you denied, the facing of the fears that were driving decisions from below, the examination of the patterns that kept repeating, and the willingness to understand what was producing them. This work is not glamorous. It does not photograph well. Nobody gives you credit for it in the underground season. But it is the difference between rising into something real and rising into something that will eventually, inevitably, collapse back into what was never actually changed. 6. The 4 things you must protect during the rise. When the rise comes, and it will come, for the person who has done the work, there are 4 things that must be protected with genuine ferocity. Because the rise, if it is real, will produce pressure, and pressure, without these 4 things intact, can undo what the underground season built. The first, your relationship with solitude. The underground season gave you something invaluable: time alone with your own interior, the discipline of genuine self-encounter, the capacity to hear the deeper layers of yourself without constant external noise. When the rise comes, when the world begins to want more of you, when the demands on your time and attention increase, the greatest danger is the loss of this solitude. Not because busyness is wrong, because the solitude is where the work continues, and the work never stops. Not if you want the rise to mean something. Protect the silence. Protect the time alone. Protect the relationship with your own interior that made the rise possible. The second, your original direction. The underground season clarified something, perhaps slowly, perhaps painfully, but it clarified what you are actually for, what genuine direction feels like from the inside. When the rise comes, other directions will present themselves, opportunities that are real but are not yours, paths that are successful but are not the one, invitations that come from the world's sudden interest in who you appear to be, rather than from any understanding of who you actually are. The ability to say no to these, to hold the original direction with genuine fidelity, is what allows the rise to go somewhere rather than simply everywhere. The third, your most honest relationships. not the relationships that celebrate the rise, the ones that were there before it and told you the truth anyway. The person who challenged you when challenging you cost them something. The one who stayed when staying required actual loyalty rather than the easy proximity of someone attached to your rising trajectory. These relationships become more rare and more valuable as the rise continues. Protect them. Invest in them. Do not let the momentum of the rise carry you away from the people who actually know you. The fourth, your capacity for genuine failure. This sounds strange. Stay with it. The underground season gave you a relationship with failure that is actually useful. You learned, through experience, not theory, that failure does not end you, that it contains information, that it can be metabolized and used. When the rise comes, the fear of returning to the underground season, the fear of losing what the rise produced, can make you risk-averse in ways that halt the very process that produced the rise. The person who rose because they were willing to fail in private must remain willing to fail in public if they want to continue rising. The capacity for genuine, honest, undefended failure, the willingness to be wrong, to not know, to try something and have it not work, is not a weakness that the rise should correct. It is one of the most important things the underground season built. 7. What confuses people most, and why it doesn't matter. When the rise comes, the confusion of others will take specific forms. They will attribute it to luck, to timing, to the right connection at the right moment, to some external factor that, from their perspective, explains the discontinuity between who you were and who you have become. And here is what Jung would say about this. Let them, not out of arrogance, out of understanding. The confusion is not something to be corrected through explanation. It is not a misunderstanding to be resolved. It is simply the natural response of people who did not witness the underground season encountering the results of it. You cannot give them the underground season in retrospect. You cannot make them understand what they did not watch. And more importantly, you do not need them to understand, because the rise is not for them. It is the natural, inevitable expression of what was built. Built for no audience, built in the dark, built without confirmation or validation or external proof that it was worth building. Built because something in you, the specific, Jungian self that knows what you are for, refused to accept the alternative. The confusion of others is simply the gap between what they observed and what actually happened. It is not your job to close that gap. Your job is to continue, to keep building, to keep doing the work, to keep going deeper into the interior process that produced the rise, because the rise is not a destination. It is the visible expression of a process that, if you remain committed to it, has no ceiling. 8. The 7 signs you are closer than you think. Not as comfort, as observation. The specific, recognizable signs that the underground season is approaching its expression. Sign 1. The work has stopped feeling like work. Not because it has become easy, because you have become aligned with it. When what you are doing and who you are become the same thing, the effort changes quality. This alignment is one of the last things to develop, and one of the first signs that something is about to shift. Sign 2. You have stopped needing external confirmation. The underground season, long enough, builds a specific quality of internal knowing. The moment you realize you no longer require outside validation to continue, that the work proceeds whether or not anyone is watching or approving, you have built something the rise can actually stand on. Sign 3. The right people have started finding you. Not all the right people, not in all the ways they eventually will, but 1 or 2, the ones who see something the others haven't named yet. Synchronicity clustering around your direction, is one of Jung's clearest signs that the constellation is forming. Sign 4. Old patterns have genuinely broken. Not been suppressed, not been managed more skillfully, actually broken. The reaction that used to be automatic no longer arrives. The pattern that used to repeat has stopped repeating because what was producing it has been genuinely changed. This is shadow integration, becoming visible. This is the work producing structural change. Sign 5. The fear has changed quality. Not disappeared, changed. From the fear of not being enough, which drives from below, which produces the pattern, which fuels the underground season's most painful moments, to the fear of not fully using what you have built. This shift in the quality of fear is one of the most reliable signs that the interior work has reached a threshold. Sign 6. You can hold contradiction without needing to resolve it. The capacity to hold two apparently opposing truths simultaneously, to be uncertain and still moving, to be afraid and still committed, to not know the outcome and still trust the direction, is one of the markers of the psychological maturity that genuine rises are built on. If you have developed this capacity, you have developed something that most people spend their entire lives without. Sign 7. You have genuinely stopped comparing your timeline to others. Not as a discipline, as a genuine shift in what feels relevant. The person whose rise is real has usually, by the time it arrives, stopped experiencing other people's trajectories as information about their own, not out of indifference to others, out of genuine, settled clarity about the specific direction and the specific work that belongs to them. This clarity, this genuine internal settlement about what you are for, is perhaps the clearest sign of all. 9. The final truth. Jung wrote something in the last years of his long life that reads, in the context of everything we have covered today, like a message specifically for the person in the underground season. He wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not the achievement of a lifetime, the privilege. And privilege, real privilege, the kind that cannot be purchased or inherited, is always preceded by something. The long, dark, invisible, unwitnessed season of genuine becoming. The season that looks like nothing from the outside. The season that feels, from the inside, like being buried rather than planted. The season where the roots go deep because they have to. Because the thing being prepared is going to rise higher than anything with shallow roots could support. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not the exception for whom the process does not work. You are in the underground season. And the underground season, however long it has lasted, however many times you have questioned it, however many external markers have seemed to confirm the wrong conclusion, the underground season ends. Not gradually, not incrementally, not in a way that gives the people watching enough time to adjust their model. It ends the way supersaturated solutions crystallize, the way pressure becomes a diamond, the way everything that was built in the dark finally, completely, irreversibly, becomes visible. And when it does, the confusion of others will be so complete, the distance between who they thought you were and who you have become so undeniable, the speed of what they will watch happening so disorienting, that they will search for explanations that fit the story they were telling about you. They will not find one, because the real explanation was happening in the place they never thought to look, inside you, in the dark, in the work, in the season that had no name, and was building, the entire time, everything. If this reached you, if it named the season you are currently in, that recognition is not an accident. It is the underground doing what it does when the constellation is forming. If you want more content on Carl Jung's psychology, the architecture of genuine transformation, shadow work, and the deep philosophy of becoming who you actually are, Subscribe now, because the rise that confuses everyone begins with the work that nobody sees. And you have already been doing it longer than you know.